Thank you, Tom. Really excited to be joining you all for communication school. One thing I have learned along the way in my career is it's never too late to learn and learn from other folks. And it's been a great conference so far. And just want to give a shout out to everyone who's helped organize the conference, just doing a great job of having everything coordinated. I think the Whova app is really cool. Hope everyone's had a great experience so far. And I'm a conversational kind of guy. I know we are all folks in communications who like to talk. So feel free if you've got a question during the session, type it in the chat. Tom will share it with us. We're going to have a couple moments to interact, and I encourage you to get involved with us. But yeah, storytelling, and that's been a theme of the conference so far. A lot of people talking about storytelling and why it's important to them. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, and specifically how we can execute strategically and connect meaningfully despite the shoestring budgets we often face, and really the social distance that we're also facing now. One of the challenges that we are facing as communicators. A little bit about myself. I am a former journalist, as Tom mentioned. I graduated from the University of Alabama and spent a few years working at broadcast stations across the Southeast. Eventually became a consultant working with television stations, helping them connect their digital platforms with their broadcast audience, and then had the opportunity to come to Atlanta and start the social media program here at the Institute, and have really enjoyed what I get to do here with storytelling. And you can see ways to connect with me if you'd like to. But to connect a little bit further, I wanted to share a little bit about my story. This is a picture of fourth grade Stephen. I grew up in rural Alabama. That Jacksonville on that shirt is not Jacksonville, Florida. It is Jacksonville, Alabama. I am the son of a proud Italian immigrant. And as you can see in this photo, I've probably had a few too many meatballs there that my mom had made. But when I joined Parks and Rec basketball in the fourth grade, coming from a family that, you know, sometimes my parents both worked in public service. Sometimes we had difficulty figuring out where things were going to come from. And so when I was put on the gray team, I needed to find a gray pair of basketball shorts very quickly. So as it turned out, fourth grade Stephen had this pair of Georgia Tech basketball shorts, not knowing that 20 yeyears later, he was going to end up in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. And so my mom dug these out of a clearance bin at Walmart. So those were my basketball shorts for the year. I thought it was interesting, kind of fortuitous that I ended up here at Georgia Tech, and found this photo just a few weeks ago, and wanted to share a little bit of my story with you as we're talking about storytelling and like I said, connecting meaningfully, despite those budgets that we're all facing. And I know one of the things that Tom and I also talked about, many folks also a team of one, and we're going to talk about some of those challenges. And the good news is nothing lasts forever. Whether it's the challenges you're facing, whether it's COVID-19 and those situations that you might be dealing with as a communicator. You know, we face challenges from time to time, and we've been here before. A interesting sort of chart that looks at 2008 when the recession hit. And that was really a time where social media marketing and storytelling through YouTube saw its first initial climb. Was at a time where things weren't going so well. And marketing and storytelling became really at a forefront at a time where the United States was facing one of its biggest challenges. So for me, what I think sets good and great communicators apart is how we take challenges like what we're facing and turning them into opportunities, and specifically opportunities in storytelling. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because I feel like stories are the power behind our brands. And when we're facing challenges, how can we use our communications know-how to turn those opportunities into a launching pad for great content? So we're going to look at why now, some of the specific things that make it a great time for folks in communications and the lessons we can learn from what we're facing right now, as well as how we can take some of the tools that are at our disposal to have meaningful impact in what we're trying to do, telling stories for the brands we work for. I also have a few tips and tricks for ideation and creation. So when I'm talking about opportunities for storytelling, one of them that is front of mind right now is the fact that more people are on their devices right now, open to our stories. A Swedish group, Statista, worked with mobile service providers and found that mobile phone usage is actually up 70% since the pandemic started. More people are on their phones right now looking for content. Little interesting side note of that study, that 25% of mobile phone users also say they've never cleaned their phone. So nice little statistic there. Okay, let's try this in the chat. What a question for you all. What was the most watched or streamed program of 2020? Let's see if what we can get in the chat there, Tom, if anybody has any ideas, the most watched program of 2020.
Well, so far we've got news, we've got Tiger King, that Tiger Tiger show on Netflix. Now I want to know what that is. Now you've piqued my curiosity.
Hey, we got it right. The most watched program of 2020 was the Tiger King program, the extended documentary series on Netflix with Joe Exotic there. 64 million American households estimated to have watched this. There are only about 120 as calculated by Nielsen. So considering more than half of American households watched this, kind of interesting statistic there. A second question for us, Tom. We'll check to see what people think. Sales of which consumer item grew 647% from 2019 to 2020?
So far we've got toilet paper, paper towels, webcams, hand sanitizer, firearms, masks, wipes, cell phones.
Lots of good answers coming in there. For me, I think I bought 647 new pairs of elastic waistband pants for all of the weight I've put on during COVID. But actually, this product actually had a run on stores, and for weeks and months in many locations, you could not find active dry yeast because so many people took up the hobby of bread making. And
it's so true.
Another little
that
interesting side note.
we were yeast and couldn't find it.
Yeah, I remember I couldn't find yeast as well. I was going to try to take my hand at bread making. What's interesting about that, and when we look at where we're at as far as storytelling, is that people are looking for these types of distractions, and it's an opportunity for us as people are looking for ways to deal with these decreased social interactions, with anxiety, with potential confinement. And where that opportunity sort of shifts for us is people are also more open to your brand's value right now. What it is you stand for, what are the things you might be concerned about, and the things you might be doing to make your community better. Another opportunity for us when we're thinking about storytelling. Because of this, because there's a lot of content being put out there, because more people are on their phones and our attention spans are a lot shorter, content does not have quite as long as a shelf life as it used to on social media, on the web. There are more eyes on content appearing on these feeds and more items appearing in search results. And consistency for that reason is important. Making sure that we are paying attention to what our messaging is, and it's as good quality as it can be. And I think it's important to keep in mind during this time that content and storytelling along with that is a long game, rather than having the type of tunnel vision that we typically do on one-off posts or flyers. This really is a time for us to look and expand our craft of creating quality content for our users. So one last question. Okay, does anybody remember the name of the media marketing company that was researching mobile phone usage? Let's see, Tom, if anybody can remember that. Any answers in the chat? Sounds like maybe not.
Yes. Sorry, Statista.
Okay, someone got it. So someone was paying.
Yeah,
Someone, yeah, okay, we got
Katie
that.
and
Let's
Amanda, yay for you.
good job there. Let's ask one more question and see what response we get in the chat. Um, what what color were my basketball shorts?
We have gray, 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 gray.
So sounds like Tom, people maybe have remembered that a little bit better.
It looks like it. They're consistent. And one person said with a GT logo.
With the GT logo. The point being here, of course, stories have power. I don't think I have to explain that to you all. It's part of why you're here in this session. But I think it's important to remember some of the things that we're going to talk about here, and maybe this will help drive this home for you of what are the things that help us remember and really soak in the messages that we're trying to get. And one of the things we look for here at Georgia Tech for storytelling, we keep this in mind, is these three V's we're looking for when we're approaching content and stories in general. Is we're looking for things that are visual, they have imagery or video that is exciting. We're also looking for things that are visceral in nature, meaning it creates some type of feeling or emotion. Or as a third tier, we're also looking for things that are valuable. Is this something that I can like or share or possibly leave a comment on? Does it give me something, make my day a little bit better? These are things that we look for as a sort of launching point for our story generation process. If we're hitting two of these, we're normally in really good shape. If we've got all three, hey, we know this is a piece of content that is going to probably perform pretty well for us, and it's worth investing time and resources in. So now what I'd like to move into is looking at some examples, and we're going to look at a variety of different things. And just want to reiterate, if you have any questions along the way in this, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and Tom will send them our way. So when we're thinking about good visuals, I think a really interesting opportunity to look at a good example would be the Cincinnati Zoo and some of the storytelling they're doing around their brand on social media. So zookeepers are sharing not only photos and videos, but also live streams of things that have happened not only during COVID, but now it's extended into as they return to operations. One of the kind of cool things they do on Facebook is they live stream when they move the penguins around the zoo and sort of march them through the halls and buildings behind the corridors of the different exhibits. So it's sort of twofold. The visual there, fantastic, right? You're seeing these animals, cute animals, always a plus on social media. But some of the value behind that is, hey, I am getting to go behind the scenes, and I get to see something that it feels like nobody else is getting to see, or I'm getting a peek behind the curtain of something I thought I might not get to see before. Makes it also shareable, providing value in that way. Something else that they've done particularly well in their storytelling is making sure their content is timely and their copy is written in a way that evokes some kind of feeling. This around New Year's, they posted this photo of one of their armadillos, Juanita, who appeared to have given up on her New Year's resolution in her exercise wheel. But hey, the value that goes along with this image here is just the association we often have of giving up on our own workout plan after the new year. Just a great opportunity for a story there. Another brand I think that does this well, looking at something a little bit larger, IKEA, who has done a fantastic job in general of just positioning themselves and what they do best, specifically meaningful products that have real world and timely impact. I think something they've done during COVID-19 in particular is showing people specifically how they can take items and rework them for things they may be needing at home. One of their trays that they had sort of positioned as a breakfast in bed tray earlier, you see in this advertisement, they had reworked to show as a way to have a stand-up desk at home. So really, really good example of taking a look at how you can provide value in your storytelling process. Another really, really nice example that I think takes advantage of not only providing value, but thinking about the visual images that will come in and creating opportunities for engagement through a storytelling process is a variety of artists who have taken to websites, YouTube, social media under what they called Quarantine Art Club. And what these artists would do is provide a prompt. They'd say, okay, draw a self-portrait and then post it under this hashtag. And what you'd see is a variety of people eventually sharing their stories through their own self-portrait. And as these started to come in during the pandemic, it sort of evolved. Another artist would post little drawing tutorials. The example here on the bottom, you'll see after the inauguration, she prompted users to have a step-by-step example of how to draw Bernie Sanders from that iconic sort of meme post. And so kind of cool opportunity there for these artists to provide something that makes sense. What can you provide on these channels through the stories that you're telling, through the visual, through the opportunity to provide value for folks, whether it's just making their day a little bit better or giving them something to do or interact with. So now some examples of how we employ some of this at Georgia Tech. And one of the things we think about when we are approaching storytelling for our brand is how do we creatively deal with the circumstances that we're dealing in any given scenario. So COVID hits, and we are realizing we're having to shift gears for a lot of things on campus. One of the stories that we typically tell at Georgia Tech is our homecoming story. And a tradition here for us is crowning our Mr. and Mrs. Georgia Tech, which, because of the type of school we are, it is not a popular vote. The students have to demonstrate academic prowess. They go through an interview process. They have to give a presentation, and it's important for the traditions that we hold here at Georgia Tech. When we realized we weren't going to be able to do that, we used a free streaming platform to reenact what we would have done on the football field in a socially distanced environment with the help of some guidance from our health services department. And we were able to live stream the entire announcement of Mr. and Mrs. Georgia Tech. We were able to provide that visual, that feeling of being a part of Georgia Tech's tradition, do it through a free platform that I'll talk a little bit about later. But dealing with those circumstances to continue to tell a story, like I said, taking a challenge and turning it into an opportunity for creating content and creating a great story. Another thing we try to do here at Georgia Tech is use the networks we have to our advantage. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about this, but building a strategic audience. So we mine our users for great content. And as you can see that through the stories we tell on our Instagram channel, have a significant number of reach with content that we have not generated. And actually, when you look at these, some of our most engaged photos of 2020 and 2021, we took none of these photos. These are all from our users, and using that to help tell our story, because these people are part of our brand and our story. One of my favorite photos of the year is actually this graduate in the middle who the pandemic, when the Blue Angels, the Navy's Blue Angels were flying over cities as just a show of support for frontline workers. She was outside taking her pictures for graduation and just happened to capture this image right as the planes flew overhead. Ended up being one of our most engaged posts of the year, just for us to be able to tell the story of one of our students in this incredible moment. One thing we try to do too in our storytelling effort is really make the most of us putting our resources into telling a story. And a good example of this would be how we approached something that fell into our lap when we found out that students at Georgia Tech were working on opening the first student-run voting ballot in the country. So inside our basketball arena on campus, these students pulled together and opened up a Fulton County voting precinct where all the staff, all of the poll workers were students at Georgia Tech. First polling location like that in the country. So we realized, hey, there is a lot of different components here. We've got some photos, we'll get a little bit of video. It turns into a social media post for us, as you see here on the left. We write a story for our news center that you'll see on the right side of the screen. We're also able to share that as part of our media relations effort. So when we have something that is big like this, where there are some visual components that we realize there may be a pitchability, if you will, for media, we're going to pull all of those things together and make that all into one package. So the photos, the video, maximize the effort of us putting resources into telling this story. One of the other things, as I mentioned, when we're thinking about that visceral element of stories, can we tell stories about our brand that are centered on emotion? And one of the things that we look to do is seek out those stories here at Georgia Tech through finding the people on campus that tie into some of the strategic elements of things we're working on. So during COVID, we took on the endeavor of trying to have our own inter-community testing program. And so what we did here at Georgia Tech is we came up with a novel saliva-based test for COVID. And we were able to test our own community for the past several months just to make sure we're keeping everybody safe. It was surveillance testing, so we knew what the rates were here around Georgia Tech. But what we found was happening was volunteers from all over campus were helping take part in that effort, whether it was members of our groundskeeping team who were driving carts around to actually drive these lab kits to different locations here on our campus, or custodians who were helping set up the testing locations on campus. We had students who were designing stickers to help keep people motivated to keep testing. It turns pictures turn into social media posts, which turn into stories like you see on the right side of the screen, which can help populate our web presence as well. And these photos, many of which are taken on iPhone. Our smartphones play a large role in our storytelling process here at Georgia Tech. And as we build stories as well, we use free tools like Canva, like Adobe Spark, to build some of the graphic elements even that you see on the right side of the screen that we incorporate into our web presence. And so we're able to create a sense of pride and accomplishment and really honed in on that emotion, telling the story of that. But also, as you can tell from that previous story, we're looking at telling stories about the people behind Georgia Tech's brand. And that is a really important component of our storytelling endeavor here. And I think it's an easy place where people can start if they're having a little bit of trouble figuring out how to launch on storytelling as a strategic endeavor that they're looking to do for their brand. A good example of this is, celebrating success as a community. That's something we can do with our brand. And this student here who just graduated with her PhD, actually her PhD and her MBA here in 2020. In 2019, she had earned 2 more master's degrees. So all total four master's and PhD degrees in the span of about 2 years. She's the daughter of a Cambodian refugee. She's going to go on to teach engineering at West Point. Her story really speaks to a lot of the different things that we're looking to do strategically. And us spending just a little bit of time sitting down and talking to her, getting a couple photos, and then sharing this not only through our social platforms, but also, as you see on our news center, provides a lot of strategic value for us. And, as you start on this process and you start looking at storytelling as a high value strategic target, I think you'll start finding opportunities to think big and really jump at things that you thought maybe wouldn't be possible. And a good example of this, actually just a couple of weeks ago, we had reached out to NASA because a Georgia Tech graduate was going to be the commander of the Dragon 2 launch that was headed to the International Space Station. We reached out hoping we may be able to do something with Shane Kimbrough, our graduate, before he launched into space, or maybe even right at launch. It was a long shot for us. So we thought, okay, no harm, no foul if it doesn't come through. But we were a little bummed when they said, no, we won't be able to do anything with the launch. But 3 days later, they contacted us and asked if we would want to Skype with Shane live from the International Space Station, and had a really cool opportunity to connect with two astronauts who Shane ended up taking a Georgia Tech flag with him. You can see behind his head. So we've got a piece of Georgia Tech up at the International Space Station. And we try not to limit ourselves, even though we've got a pretty small team. When I first started at Georgia Tech, it was a team of one, just myself, and now we're up to 3 on our team here at Georgia Tech, and it expands what we're able to do. And part of that process for us was telling stories like these, was thinking big, was trying to execute on high-profile stories and saying, going back to our leadership and saying, hey, here's the value in what we do in our storytelling process. I want to show a little bit of a video about how this sort of all comes together. And one thing I want to remark about before you see this video is all of the footage you're going to see here was shot on our smartphones, and easily accessible tools. So if you're thinking, hey, video is something that I am intimidated by, I'm not sure how I'll be able to do that. This was all shot on smartphones, and I'm going to show you guys a tool a little bit later that makes that process a little bit easier. So our storytelling process, when we're thinking about the visual, the visceral, the valuable, it comes together with this video here. You'll see where we went around the state of Georgia the day before we released our admissions decisions, and surprised students at their high schools that they had received admission to Georgia Tech.
Congratulations, you've been accepted.
I'm going to turn the volume on this down a little bit. We'll have a link to this video that Tom's going to share in the chat so you can watch the whole thing. As we get to the end, we actually talk to some of these students who share some of their stories. When we play out here, there's a little bit of a lag, so I'll let you guys watch that on your own if you would like to. But
Yep,
when you look at this,
on the chat now, Stephen, it's out there for folks to click on after the session.
Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate that. I mean, when you look at this, it really hits a lot of the different things that we are trying to accomplish here at Georgia Tech, where we're talking about the excitement of being a college student, the value that we provide to the communities in and around the state of Georgia. And it's worth us investing a little bit of time in, but as I mentioned, this was all shot on smartphones. Even the interviews here, we're able to gather these on our own. We turned this video in a day. And what this ends up sort of turning into for us is not only content that you'll see on our social media platforms. I think these videos ended up getting over 120,000 views on our respective social media platforms. It also turns into media opportunities. We invited local media markets to be there when we surprised these students. We had split our team up across the state. We essentially had one person in each of the 4 cities that we went to. With a smartphone, chronicling this and helping contact the media in those respective cities so they could be part of it. And so this is the CBS affiliate in Macon, Georgia, doing their own version of this story. And then on the right, it also becomes part of our storytelling process when we are talking about enrollment and admissions at Georgia Tech, and it all comes together in one package for us. So before we talk about some tips and tricks, I wanted to check in, Tom, any questions we might have that we could touch base on?
No questions so far, except for when will the presentation be posted?
Yes, the presentation will definitely be posted. We'll make sure that is shared, and you guys will all have access to that. So here's some of the tips and tricks. that we try to focus on. Um, so we at Georgia Tech try to go beyond just brand awareness and really show some of the things about our personality. One of the things that I've talked about on our team is that just making folks aware of things is not enough anymore. And it is not a strategy either. Brand awareness is not a strategy, right? Because that's what everybody else is trying to do. So just getting the word out is not enough anymore. What we want to do is really let people know what Georgia Tech is about, what we stand for, what are the cool things that we're doing, what are the things that set us apart from other institutions who are posting things and sharing stories in digital platforms. We're going to do both of these together. I mentioned constructing a strategic following. We showed those pictures from Instagram that were user generated. One thing that you can do almost immediately, no matter what size of team you have, especially through your social media platforms, is to start following people who are closest to your brand. For us at Georgia Tech, that means current students, that means staff members, that means faculty members, it means alumni who recognize or post in their bios on Instagram or Twitter that they are tied to the Georgia Tech community. As we build that following, what we see is higher returns on engagement on the stories that we tell. It's a really easy thing to be able to do to see a return on your investment quickly as you're sharing stories on your digital properties. So that's something we look to do quite often, and we spend a little bit of time each week doing that. We'll get on our platforms and try to not only follow a few folks, but do what you see in step number 3 is building trust and loyalty through interacting with your audience. And a lot of times that's through your social media platforms. So we try to go on and drop a few comments every now and again, just engage with people as our brand is Georgia Tech. Not only of handling, the typical customer service type complaints of, hey, I'm in X dorm and we don't have hot water, but responding to graduates and telling that we're excited for them and leaving a comment on their Twitter page or on their Instagram profile. Those types of things we see really has impact on the engagement on the stories that we tell. But what those two things do also allow us to see the stories that are happening inherently in our community. So when we are building that strategic following and when we're engaging with the people that we follow, we see the stories that they're telling. So when I log into Twitter or Instagram, I can almost immediately find 1 or 2 potential story items on any given day. And those 2 items can't really highlight enough of what that will do specifically for upping your storytelling game. Another thing that you'll be able to do to sort of increase your storytelling power is do some A/B testing on your content. Whether that means posting one item on Monday, posting another item on Friday, and comparing the two. It gives you an idea of what starts to work for your brand. If you haven't had the opportunity to dig into maybe your web analytics or your social media analytics, I would encourage you to, because we do that pretty regularly here at Georgia Tech, and it helps us hone what types of stories perform better for us. So some of the data that we find is that on certain platforms, photo-driven posts do really well. And so we will craft stories that center around a photo for those platforms. Facebook in particular, we've seen more engagement with our user base for photos as compared to video or live streams. Now, there are some things where we feel like video has to tell the story. For example, when we go visit folks, visit potential students, that's going to be a video for us, right? But we know where those things tend to work for us. One of the things that we've also found as far as telling stories that really resonate with our users is images versus sharing PDFs of posters or long form text graphics. We find that images do much better in terms of engagement. And we very, very rarely, and I can't remember a time in the past 3 or 4 years that we've ever posted a poster for an item. And we've really moved away from trying to use our digital properties to as a first goal of trying to promote items. And we're more trying to talk about the value of items and approach that as an opportunity for getting people to take part in events, as talking first about what's the value for them to even know why something exists. We also look at long text versus short text, and as you start to dig into the analytics for your pages, especially for small teams, it can help sort of inform what types of stories you may want to invest more in. Say you find that more people are spending time on a longer form, in-depth piece on your website. Maybe it's worth your time to invest more in writing a couple of those per week. But for us, one of the things we found that length of story has not been something that has equated to as time on page or for user clicks. So oftentimes with some of these stories that you've seen that we've shared, we may only write 800 or 1,000 words. We'll share the video, we'll share a couple of photos, and we'll find that is enough. And often we will share a link to one of the items that gives you a little bit more information, whether that's an admissions page or whether that's a news page. But you know, as you dig into some of this testing and looking at the data, it will really up the strategic sense and the sort of allocation of resources to how you tell stories, and makes that easier when you're a small team. Another quick tip is follow the trends you're seeing. Look at what some of your favorite brands do on their websites, on their social media platforms, and how can I replicate this for my brand? How can I look at what the theme of this story is and possibly do my own version of this? And we do that quite often from Georgia Tech. So here are my top tips when it comes to storytelling. I think these are things that a lot of people kind of forget about. When you're looking for stories, at every level for me, whether it's internal or external, have more conversations with people. And that is where you're really going to mine stories from the beginning. I'll give you a couple of quick examples of this. We had our the first ever Georgia Tech student who became Miss Georgia a couple of years ago. And immediately our first thought was, let's get her in and talk to her, to find out what's unique about her, what opportunities may be at hand. And what we found out is there was a unique tradition with the Miss America pageant that each contestant needed a pair of shoes that represented their state. So as a Georgia Tech student, she was hoping she might be able to have a pair of shoes that reflected her experience as a tech student. So we partnered her up with a couple of industrial design and mechanical engineering students, and they 3D printed a pair of shoes for her that you see on the bottom of the screen that looked like the Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech, the car that serves as our unofficial mascot. So she ended up wearing the first ever 3D printed pair of shoes at the Miss America pageant. The story ends up getting covered by the Associated Press. We're able to chronicle the story that is very strategic to Georgia Tech, posted on our website. Again, that all comes from a conversation, internal conversation there with one of our own folks. Externally, what we do in media relations, we reach out to folks and try to let them know things that are going on at Georgia Tech all the time. So we've been in contact with producers at the Ellen Show, because of something we thought could end up with one of our students on the show. Didn't pan out, but what did end up coming from it was because we had built a relationship through having a conversation with those producers for an opportunity when the Super Bowl was hosted here in Atlanta. The producers contacted us back and asked if they could actually host a ticket giveaway on campus. We had about 48 hours to play in this live shot, but it turned into an incredible storytelling opportunity for Georgia Tech to just highlight our campus, highlight the excitement of our students, and just show campus off and our position here in the community in Atlanta. And not bad free press for us to be on a national show like the Ellen Show. Another tip for storytelling, especially if you're a small team, this is something that has come in critical for me, keeping a list of ideas. And this is my whiteboard right here on the left. When I see something coming up, we try to write down what are the things not only that are a possible story item, who are people that we have as subject experts on things that might be timely, that again would provide value for folks. We try to find research opportunities that have that visual element, like we mentioned, and finding content that's visual, visceral, and valuable. And we try to keep all of these things front and center for us. So it could be something as physical as a whiteboard or a notebook that you keep with you. Every time you get a little idea of something, jotting that down so you keep yourself accountable for tracking these ideas down. But then it could move like something you see on the right, a tool like Airtable, where we use some digital organization to keep ideas and keep ourselves to task on things that are strategic for Georgia Tech and how they might play out. Airtable has some really great free options as well. This is definitely not an endorsement of them, but I would not be sharing it if it were not a free tool. I feel pretty passionate about sharing free tools because we are on a tight budget here at Georgia Tech, and we've got a small team. That's something that we're thinking about constantly. And this may be one of the easiest and most impactful things you can do as a storyteller. Try sitting down. This is an exercise that I think kickstart storytelling for anybody at any level with any budget. Sit down with a couple members of your team if you can, or you can do this by yourself, and write three terms or phrases that set your organization apart from everybody else in your field. And we've done this several times with different groups at Georgia Tech, and I want to show you how it sort of plays out for us and what it looks like when we approach storytelling. So when we think of some things that set Georgia Tech apart, we've got our location in the heart of Atlanta. We know that's something that really sets us apart from other colleges and universities, that we are sort of set in the middle of an urban environment in the South. So that means we have the opportunity to post pictures of our skyline, of using terms like y'all because we're in the South. Maybe that means that's why we'll take advantage of doing a story around National Sweet Tea Day, as opposed to doing a story about National Crab Cake Day or something like that. Like, knowing our location sets us apart has been something that allows us to kickstart storytelling and using that as something to our advantage. We also know we're a little bit nerdy because of the type of school we're at. We're engineering, science, technology focus. We know Star Wars has been a particular point of inspiration for many of our students and faculty. So, that may provide an opportunity for us to share something on our digital properties and launch a story there. And as you can see from our post on May the 4th with a little nod to Yoda there, it's something that our audience engages with, the type of stories that are meaningful for our audience. Another thing that I think sets Georgia Tech apart as we talk about our community is that we really roll up our sleeves and get things done. We are doers, we're makers, we are problem solvers here at Georgia Tech. And when we highlight these stories of success on our digital properties, in the stories that we tell, we see that it has a really marked impact, a positive impact on engagement for us. So we're telling stories of faculty members who do research. We're telling students who roll up their sleeves and get the job that they're looking for through attaining their degree. And this exercise of writing these terms has made it a lot easier for us as a small team to figure out where can we focus on areas that we want to tell stories that we know will provide impact. So when you take this exercise, break it down into a couple of buckets that you may want to focus on, and then apply the ideas of finding content that's visual, that has a good image element to it, that sparks some kind of feeling and has value for your audience. You have set up an equation where you can really be successful. I wanted to talk about some free or low-cost tools that we use in our storytelling process. I mentioned Adobe Spark a little bit earlier. You can actually register for a branded account on Spark, and so we're able to drop in the fonts that tie to our brand. You can put in your Pantone colors, and so we have those sort of brand elements set up for us on Spark that make it much easier for us to create content that looks like it's tied cohesively into our brand, and we do that. We're able to turn graphic elements for the stories we tell pretty quickly, and you can see we incorporate them into our web stories, we incorporate them into social media. So that's what we focus on. I think Canva and Velo is more for social media video, but you can find how that might tie into maybe a YouTube channel or for videos that you could post on your websites as well. Canva has the same functionality as well as Adobe Spark, but they all have robust free versions of tools. Pocket is a web-based platform that I use personally to find items of inspiration. Some of those brands we watch that are fantastic storytellers, when we see something cool that they do, it's just a way to sort of organize the things you see that look cool. It is also a free web-based service that you could find helpful for organizing ideas. I mentioned Airtable as well. They have a pretty robust grid-based system for organizing stories and story ideas, and possibly working with your team on executing those. BeLive is a free tool for live streaming, adding graphics, video, and other elements to make your live streams on social properties look a little bit more slick. That's what we used in that opportunity I showed you with the Mr. and Mrs. Georgia Tech announcement. We actually had a ticker on the bottom of the screen that showed the finalist names. We were able to pull in a split screen and have two cameras. It's a little bit more advanced, but you can use it using webcams, and you can create a television quality live stream for what is essentially a free account at no cost. There is a paid version that would allow you to have a couple more functionality items like dropping in your logo, but the free version is super robust, and we have done plenty of live streams using just the free version there. I wanted to show you the tool that we use when we are recording with our smartphones. This is a gyroscopic gimbal. It's made by Zhiyun, which is the company you see there. And what it allows us to do is turn our smartphone into a super steady camera. I'm going to show you how we clip this in here. So I'm taking my iPhone and clipping it in right here, and then when you hit the power button on here, you're going to see the apparatus kind of stabilizes itself. But essentially, with now the video quality that you can get on your smartphone, this automatically stabilizing the shot, you've almost got a film quality shot with your smartphone. And most of the video you saw was our team shooting like this. It's these are available for under $100. We've purchased a few for our team to be able to use. And then along with this, what we will use, as you see on the bottom of the screen, is a kit from a company called Rode. It's a Swedish company that allows you to plug a microphone into your lightning bolt port on your phone and capture high quality audio. So with this and the microphone, we've essentially got a camera crew that we can run around and get interviews and get B-roll from all over campus and really get high quality content. So that's where we're at. I know I've talked a lot, Tom, and you know, one of the things I know that is difficult is now turning these ideas into execution. But I figured now is the time. We've got about 10 minutes or so. We can, if there are some questions, happy to address them, or even talking about ideas, happy to do that too.
So we do have a question out there, and then I've got one for you too. Biggest advice for a one-person communications or PR department? What's your top tip?
Yeah, I think it would kind of be the some of the twofold that I had mentioned about getting out and talking to more people. I think you'll be surprised how many stories get turned when you're actually having more conversations with the folks. I think it's asking them the things that they're passionate about, asking them the projects that they're working on, and really focusing on the people inside your brand first. I think that's an easy way to launch storytelling when you're feeling like you're at an impasse or having trouble getting started from the get-go, is to focus on the people who are within your brand. You know, that leads me to one other thing that some conversations we saw unfold on a couple of the chats in Huva was that some people were concerned about legal issues with how we tell stories. And I'd say if that's a concern you're having, especially with getting launched, is have a conversation with the legal department. Ask them the things you can cover. Ask them what you need to do to be able to cover things that are sensitive, and keep those conversations going. We run into those here at Georgia Tech, but I think it all comes down to a top tip of being have more conversations in person with people, both internally and externally.
So I get this kind of question all the time, and that is that government communications tend to be very stodgy and serious and somber in their tone. And you mentioned back a little bit in your presentation about having a personality for your brand. And I know we at the Oregon Department of Transportation have really worked on that, but it's a bit risky because part of the personality of our brand is humor. And I get the pushback all the time. Government can't be humorous. What are you talking about? And so the question is for the bosses, for the leaders in an organization, how do you as a one-person shop kind of pitch doing things in a non-governmental way?
Yeah, for us, how we approached it here at Georgia Tech was twofold. I think what has always worked for us and our leadership is coming with some data points. So we're showing how this is successful where other brands have applied a use of humor or a more casual tone. And when you look at the numbers of where it works for other folks, you can show how it might apply for you. But I think when you're making that pitch to your higher ups, to your administrators, your executive leadership, is promising them you'll come back with numbers about how this worked. And a big part of storytelling is always, at least for us, and I think if you're going to be successful, is going back to look at the data that is offered to you through your web platforms, through your social media platforms, to see, did it work? I mean, some brands may figure out us being funny is not working. We may be better taking a serious tone. And for us at Georgia Tech, we've been able to figure out what are the instances where we can be funny. And you start to figure out too, by looking at data, this is not an opportunity for us to have a light tone. You know, when one of the things to give you an example of this, I think our students take it very seriously when there's like a tornado warning or school cancels for snow here, which is, I'm sure the folks in Oregon would laugh at us for this, but even the threat of snow, we shut down. But people do take it seriously, and we've had some instances where people's lives have been in danger. So, you know, another university may be able to laugh off a snow day because they have them so often. But for us, we found it's really not the opportunity for us to make light of ice or snow because you know, we're just in the type of situation where the people could be at risk. But we do have opportunities like posting Baby Yoda, where we can be a little bit more lighthearted with our brand, and we start to, by looking at data, know when we can do that and when we can't.
I would definitely echo that. And I would add an emphasis on what you said a little while ago, and that's having those conversations. We did, or in the midst of doing a campaign about Real ID, wanting people to get a Real ID so that they can make it through airport security. And the state to the north of us, Washington State, had a very humorous, cartoony, very whimsical kind of look at Real ID. And so we did some focus group research. We just asked real people, which approach do you like? And they were extremely clear. Do not be whimsical. Do not be funny. Do not be cartoony. We don't like this at all. Be serious and straight and clear with us. So I think it's doing that. It's asking those questions. You can do many little focus groups, you know, call 5 people and you can probably get a pretty good idea of what people are going to think about stuff. So yeah, good tip. So we've only got a couple minutes. Go ahead.
I was gonna wanted to go. I remembered a point I wanted to make about the legal situation, because I know some folks had asked questions about this. What we do when we are out in our storytelling process, we carry a model release with us, and so we'll have people sign those. Another approach that we have worked out with our legal department is to have people. We have a two-sentence statement that people can actually say on video. That way, we have them recorded, basically saying, "I agree to having my likeness being recorded. and to be used on Georgia Tech's digital properties. And just that has been enough of an agreement with our legal team to say, hey, we're comfortable with you going out to do this as long as people say this sentence and you record it. That has really helped sort of streamline that process and help us get over that hurdle of people being worried about the legal ramifications of telling stories.
Fantastic. Well, you've given us so many great tips and tools, from hardware to how do you get started in creating story ideas and taking those risks, and so many of the free tools that you've mentioned. I know I'm going to go back and look at your presentation and take a look at some of those myself. So, Stephen, we so much appreciate you taking the time to share with us today. And I would encourage folks to look back to this session. That's where you'll be able to find the PowerPoint when Stephen uploads it. And we do have some more content this afternoon. So we've got about a half an hour break here. Then you can head to your next breakout. But again, Stephen, thank you so much.
Thank you.